welcome to the Fantasy Wildcard. I'll be your host this week, Matt. You can follow me on Twitter at MattFFDynasty. And with me, as always, is my two amazing co-hosts. First off, we're going to start with Ali. You can follow on Twitter at FFDynastyGrill. How you doing, Ali?
I'm really good, thank you, Matt. Yes, very good. Although a bit depressed as it's the end of the bank holiday weekend, but just thinking about next week's draft is picking me up. So really good. Thanks, Matt. How are you doing?
Yeah, I feel your pain, mate. I've been the same. I had 4 days off, spent a bit of time with the family, not been on Twitter as much as usual. It's been quite nice, to be honest. Quite enjoyed the little breakaway, a bit of relaxation and stuff. But yeah, like yourself, we're gearing up for the draft now, aren't we? So time to zone back in, get back into the swing of things with the NFL and everything. And yeah, looking forward to the show. We've got a great show coming up. But before that, we're going to introduce our second co-host, Kev, who you can follow on Twitter at Dynasty_Go. Kevin, how you doing?
Good evening, boys. Thank you very much. Yes, in a fine spirits tonight. I've just been to see my rugby team win this afternoon, the mighty Casper Tigers, as you can see, rocking the gear still. If I took my hoodie off, there's my Cash jersey as well. So either way, you're going to see some of the colours. But yeah, in a really good mood. We beat our local rivals, Leeds Rhinos, lol. So perfect mood for tonight's show, and we've got a great one.
Absolutely. I've got a good one coming up. But before we get on with the show, Ali, just want to remind the listeners about the upcoming streamathon.
Yeah, so we've got the draft to look forward to next week. And then next month, it's almost a month today, Saturday, the 21st of May, our charity streamathon, where us three mental dudes, we go on there for 16 hours of live Dynasty talk, raising funds for the Amazing Mind charity who provide mental health support, which has been crucial, especially through the pandemic, and it's still ongoing. So a lot of people struggling. So we're raising money for those, and the donations page is open. We've had a few donations, but please, if you can, just dig deep and just give what you can, because it's going to be a grueling day, but it's going to be some fantastic content as we cover all the NFL teams with some fantastic guests. So check out our link tree at Fantasy Wildcard on Twitter. You'll find all the details on there where you can donate. Yeah, can't wait for it.
Absolutely. 1 month to go, boys, and then it's go time. So looking forward to it, and it's going to be a lot of fun. But with that, we're going to crack on with today's show, where we're going to be previewing the upcoming rookie class, and this time we're going to move on to the wide receivers and tight end positions. Obviously, we've covered the quarterbacks and running backs, and you can catch that on wherever you listen to your podcast. So be sure to check that out if you haven't already. But as I say, we're going to move on to the wide receivers and tight ends now. We're going to give our consensus top 5, and then we're each going to give you a nice little sleeper at the position as well. So we're going to kick things off. We're going to go to the wide receiver position. Our current consensus wide receiver 1, the guy that's in tier 1. We currently have 2 players in tier 1, but this guy we've currently got in wide receiver 1. It's Treylon Burks. Over to you, Ali.
Yeah, so Treylon Burks is mine and your wide receiver 1, Matt. Kev, you've got a wide receiver 2. But despite his combined struggles, it's not really affected his ranking for me. He's still my wide receiver 1. I think going into the process, I always knew that he's got a higher bust rate than some of the safer wide receivers. Talk about Garrett Wilson, incredibly safe. You talk about Burks, I think there's definitely a bust rate there. But I also think he's got the highest upside. So if I'm going to shoot for the moon with one of the early picks, I'm going to be going for Treylon Burks, because I think he has got that real upside. His play speed is elite for a guy that size. He's big, he's thick, he's fast. He plays really fast and tough. But I also do think there's a bit of cause for concern that I think the landing spot is most important for Burks over these other wide receivers. I think he needs to land somewhere with an offensive-minded coach. Maybe similar to a Debo role, he can be taking the ball behind the line of scrimmage, all sorts of ways that he needs to be used to be most effective, especially as a fantasy asset. So I think he goes to a team that's going to play to his strengths. But also, I do think he may be my wide receiver 1, but I also think he could be possibly the 3rd, 4th, 5th wide receiver taken off in the draft next week. I don't think he's going to be the first wide receiver we see go. But I do think he's going to get solid round 1 draft capital. I just hope that it's going to be with an offensive-minded team. And if it is, he's definitely going to be my wide receiver 1 come post-draft.
Yeah, I've got to be honest. Treylon Burks, he's a guy that we've had our eyes on for quite a while. We did our Devy show last off-season, sort of last early August, I think it was, and the title of the show was Treylon Burks 99 everything. So we was very high on him, and he's he had a great final season. He's had a bit of an up and down off season in preparation for the draft, as you mentioned, Ali. I think that the reason I'm really low on him. He's my wide receiver too, by the way, compared to your ones. And being honest, he's number one in my model. But the reason I've just got him a little bit lower is there's another guy that I think's a little bit safer. And I think where you take him in rookie drafts, I prefer to go a little bit safer at the top. Now, if it comes to your startups, that could flip where he might be a wide receiver too, I guess, in your startups. I'd be more likely then to swing it and trust the model a little bit more. Great upside. I think he's got the highest ceiling in the class, but he has got a lower floor than quite a few of these guys, actually. It's going to be interesting to see where he lands, how he's used. It's tricky. He probably needs a bit of slot work. He has one on the outside, but a lot of contested catches. It's not great when you look at the history of contested catch guys in the league. But yeah, Treylon Burks is a fine pick here. He's tier 1, which is obviously a great thing for his stock.
Yeah, I'm just going to echo what you two both said. I think the upside, I think he's got the most out of all the wide receivers in this class. We've seen what he's done over at Arkansas. That the hope is that he lands on a team that hopefully uses him in a similar way that he has in college. I'd be a little bit concerned if a team picked him up and didn't exploit those abilities that he has. The fact that he can be used all over the field. We keep banging on about this Debo role. I mean, that would be the ideal role for him. A team that's going to use him in the run game with screens, with the short targets and the long targets as well. I think he's a wide receiver that I think can do it all, and hopefully a team utilizes that. Agree with what Ali said as well. I don't think he's necessarily going to be one of the top 1, 2, 3 maybe wide receivers that go off the board in the NFL draft, but that's still not a concern for me. I mean, we don't judge his fantasy output on who gets drafted first in the NFL draft, do we? It all comes down to team needs, I think, when it comes to the NFL. And then in terms of fantasy, I mean, somebody like Burks, the fact that he can be used in that variety of ways, that's just what makes him stand out as my wide receiver 1. And despite all the off-season worries and concerns, I mean, yeah, the combine wasn't great. I mean, the 40 time was one that keeps getting brought up. I mean, did he run a 4.55, I believe? But he comes in at like 230 pounds. So, I mean, for a guy that big, 2 foot, is he 6'2", 6'3"? I mean, a guy that size to run the speed that he did, that's not a concern for me. It's obviously the 3 cone, I think, is the one that everybody's starting to get concerned about because of what we label him as, this guy that can do it all. The fact that he did struggle in the 3 cone, it's a concern. But at the end of the day, it's just a testing. I think whenever you've seen him on the field, he's exciting, and that's why I'm excited about Treylon Burks. And yeah, hopefully can get that round 1 draft capital, land on an ideal team, and then it's wheels up for me in terms of fantasy. Do you boys both agree if he goes round 1, we're feeling comfortable with Treylon Burks? For me personally, that feels like the big thing. If he gets that round 1 draft capital, then I'm more than comfortable with Burks as my wide receiver 1.
Yeah, definitely. I think he's going to get middle of round 1 draft capital. I think there could be realistically 6, possibly even 7 wide receivers taken in the first round. I think it's going to be a draft that there's a lot of teams out there with wide receiver needs, especially at the back end of the first round. So he's going to get round 1 draft capital, definitely. It's just, I think he's going to get solid round 1 draft capital. And with that, I think he's going to be crucial for the team that draft him. And I think hopefully that he's just going to get used in the right way. But if he does, he'll still remain my wide receiver 1 post-draft.
Yeah, you've got to avoid that landmine in the middle of Philadelphia. Get past them. I think that's when people are going to be sweating, especially players that have drafted the guys before the NFL draft. What's interesting is if he does go to the back end of the first, he's actually going to be on a better team. And there's a few interesting spots that he's been rumoured to. The Cowboys, the Bills are the 2 I've seen a lot of. So tied to Josh Allen, tied to Dak Prescott, it's not bad if he's the 5th wide receiver off the board and landing one of those, is it?
Absolutely, yeah. You make a great point, Kevin. And with that, we've spoke about one guy that's in tier 1. As I touched on, we've got another guy in tier 1. He's currently our consensus wide receiver 2. That's Garrett Wilson. Kev, you're wide receiver 1, so lead us off with Garrett Wilson.
I'll take the floor. Yeah, like I touched upon then a little bit with Burks being a bit riskier, higher ceiling guy. This guy, Garrett Wilson, he's safe as a bank vault, actually. You've got money in the bank. you're not going to lose anything. I think he's really secure. Wherever he goes, whichever team he lands on, he's going to be fine. So no worries there. He wins all over the field. He's great with the ball in hands. There's not a lot to give him a knock for. When I watched him, he's kind of like a better version of Jerry Jeudy. He's on that Justin Jefferson spectrum as well, somewhere in between those guys. So really high on him, especially thinking about how high the community was on Jerry Jeudy. I think he deserves better recognition than Jerry Jeudy got. He's my wide receiver 1 because he's safe. I think Olave is also safe, was on the same offense as him, but he's a bit of an older guy. Well, when I say older, he's played 4 years. He's actually younger than Treylon Burks, which not a lot of people mention. But yeah, Garrett Wilson, my wide receiver 1, safe as a bank vault, as I said. What a joke I am.
Yeah, I mean, I'm struggling to lead after that brilliant joke, Kev. You've not. But yeah, I think you've nailed it. To be honest, I mean, safe as houses. It is for me. I think he is the safest one out of these guys. Me personally, I tend to lean more for that upside as the tiebreaker between these two guys. That's why I'm leaning Burks. But yeah, safest one I think in the class. The fact that he's probably the best route running in the entire class. We know that he's got that speed. We know he's got that production. He's got everything going for him. So I've got no arguments with anybody that's got him as the wide receiver 1. But I do think it's close between these two guys. And I think, to be honest, we've pretty much nailed it with the fact that we've got them both in that tier 1. I feel personally that that's the right way to do it. You've got that blend then of that safe guy, but we've also got that guy with that bit of upside as well. Yeah, Garrett Wilson probably going to be one of the first couple of wide receivers off the board in the NFL draft. We know he's going to get that draft capital, as I say. He just ticks every box really, and just a really safe wide receiver in this class.
Yeah, I think you just touched on it. I think he could be the first wide receiver taken in this draft. I think I even written down safe 8 times because he's that safe as a prospect. I think he's the most polished. He backed it up in the combine by running a really fast 40. I just think you've got to take him early in rookie drafts. When you do, I think you're going to feel great about it. I think he's bust proof whatever team he goes to. I think he's going to thrive. I think he's really got wide receiver 1 upside with a safe floor. So if you don't want to risk it like with Treylon Burks, then pick Wilson because it's an extremely safe pick, like a bank vault. You just feel good about it. You're not going to feel bad when you pick him in the top 2 or 3 picks. It was really close between him and Burks for my wide receiver 1, which is strange because they're 2 completely different wide receivers. One's got real upside and a real low floor. The other's got upside with a high floor, and I've gone for the one with the low floor as my wide receiver 1. But both of them are fantastic wide receivers. Probably not as good as, I'm not talking about Jamar Chase here, but wide receivers who can be wide receiver 1 in Dynasty in the future.
I think it's fair as well to say that depending on your team you've got, your team needs, it'll change your decision. You might have one of these guys, one of these guys too, but actually you take your second ranked guy. If you've got a really sort of safe team, you might take Burks in that instance to go for the upside.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I remember looking at the start of this offseason when I was looking at mock drafts, the Cleveland Browns were the team that were getting selected, getting mocked with Wilson. Pretty much every mock draft that I've seen. And obviously that was before free agency. Amari Cooper's gone there now. I mean, just Deshaun Watson as well. So that negated the fact to me we're all going to be gutted if Wilson landed with the Browns. But then with Watson going over there, you kind of wanted him to land at the Browns. But now I think that with that Amari Cooper going there, I think that's probably potentially put them out of the picture of taking Wilson. And I think he could, move up the board, potentially maybe even be selected earlier than what we're expecting. Teams like the Jets obviously got early pick there looking for wide receiver. And if any of those teams that are needed at wide receiver, if they take somebody like Wilson, I agree. I think he can step in, be that top option in that offense. And then I think he's got that upside to potentially be maybe the wide receiver 1 in Dynasty. If that's a little bit too spicy, but I think he can definitely be a wide receiver 1 in that top 12 for sure.
Can I just ask a question to Kev real quickly?
Oh God!
So the Eagles,
I'm not in a shave, Ali.
Right?
I'm not in a shave.
So come next week, the Eagles draft Garrett Wilson. Kev, is he still your wide receiver 1?
Well, they say don't react to landing spot, but it wouldn't be my wide receiver one. Simple as. Matty is massive, to be honest. I thought it was a tier of 6, but it's actually about a tier of 7 or 8 when I've looked back at it. So I think there's going to be I'll use the landing spot as a tiebreaker, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, anybody on the Eagles, curtains. What about you? What if it works for you guys?
Oh, I mean, none of us like the Eagles, do we? I think so. None of us like the quarterback situation over there. So no, for me personally, I don't want Burks over at the Eagles. I don't think they'd use him in the way that we're hoping either. I mean, what they did with Devontae Smith, he's really taken that step forward. I think he looks a lot better than a lot of what people thought last year with the Eagles. But I mean, with Hurts and the limitations that we see in him, I'd be concerned if my favorite wide receiver went to the Eagles.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, Ali's in agreement. The silence says it all. So we're going to now move on to our wide receiver 3. Now we're going to move down to that tier 2 section. We've spoke about the 2 guys that we've got in his tier 1. Tier 2, the first guy up, we've got Drake London. I'm actually the lowest out of all of us. We're a bit mixed on Drake London, to be honest. I've got him at 5. Ali a little higher at 3 and Kev at 4. But yeah, this guy, an absolute size freak, 6'4", 213 pounds. I think that the big concern that everyone's speaking about at this minute is this 40 time. We've all been waiting to see what he'd run. Obviously didn't run at the combine. Then the pro day come around, said he wasn't going to run that. People are becoming concerned about that. But I think, to be honest, there's other ways of separation. I don't think it needs to be a burner. I don't think he is a burner, but I think he's got enough speed to be able to do what's needed. And as I say, I think there's other ways that he can separate. He's a big guy, he's a rangy guy. We've seen in college that in terms of contested catches, he's brilliant at it. If it's a 50-50 ball, it turns into a 70-30 and 80-20 ball with Drake London. And that's what's really exciting about him. Another thing that I've seen a lot of people mention is the fact that he's primarily been in the slot at USC. I mean, we go through this every year, don't we, with wide receivers? Oh, they only play in the slot in college. I mean, you just got to look back. Justin Jefferson, everybody was saying it about him. He primarily played in the slot. Look what he's done. Last year, Elijah Moore as well is another guy that everyone spoke about. Didn't really play much out wide. And to be honest, he looked great when he played out wide. The reasons against him was ridiculous. And while Drake London is a completely different profile to those 2 guys, personally, I don't think it should be used as a knock against him. And yeah, he's a guy that I'm excited to see what he does in the NFL. I think this could potentially be the wide receiver 1 off the board in terms of the NFL. In the NFL draft, it's going to be interesting to see who takes him. The landing spot, like with a lot of players that we're going to talk about today, landing spot is going to be key in terms of differentiating these guys in our rankings. But yeah, Drake London, another really interesting wide receiver prospect out of this upcoming class.
Yeah, we had Anthony Corrente on the last show, and he talked about Drake London could be the Jets' worst kept secret, that the fact that they secretly love Drake London. And I think I'd love it if he landed on the Jets, because it'd be really solid draft capital. I'm personally a fan of Zack Wilson. I think he could be that missing piece in their offense. So if he goes there, then I'll love him. He'll still be in wide receiver 3. I think just looking at his struggles in college, the team struggles in college, should I say. He was the only bright spot on that USC offense before his injury, and everybody comps him to Mike Evans. Now, I think that's a bit out there, considering Mike Evans is setting records, his potential Hall of Fame, arguably. But I do think that the comp could be real. The more I look into Drake London, he's incredibly similar size. He's shifty as well. He's faster than you think. Mike Evans is one of them receivers that, again, just gets tarnished with this. Oh, he's just jump ball specialist. He can't beat corners one-on-one. But he can. He's faster than you realise, because he's got that long stride. Very similar to Drake London. He's faster than you think. He can also run some really good routes. There's some videos from recently running some really, really good routes. As Matt mentioned, I think he could be that first wide receiver taken off the board. And just his 40 times is a bit disappointing to me, but the videos of him look really good. So I've got no arguments. Drake London is wide receiver 3. I'm always a sucker for a big body wide receiver. That red zone weapon. I think he can be that red zone weapon for the Jets or whatever team he gets drafted to. But yeah, I think he's going to get solid draft capital, and he's my wide receiver 3.
Yeah, I think you guys have summed it up really well. Yeah, he's not a burner. I know all about them, so I know he's definitely not a burner. Inside joke. But yeah, it is always funny when people comp guys to Hall of Fame players. I do it as well. So yeah, I'm partly to blame for that. Only thing I'd add is USC, he performed really well there in the earlier days when there was other wide receivers there that was eating. It was
Pittman.
Yeah.
Pitt Brown.
I didn't want to say Pittman, to be honest, but
Amon-Ra, your favorite.
The sun god.
The sun god.
The sun god, Amon-Ra St. Brown. So he had a lot of competition, and he performed at a younger age than these guys in the same offense. So that's another little feather in his cap. So yeah, I'd actually like him on the Jets, being honest. I think it'd be a really nice fit in that offense with Elijah Moore and no Corey Davis.
Yeah, I think he offers something, doesn't he, that the current wide receivers that they've got that they don't have. So yeah, I think there's probably a reason. There's no smoke without fire, and all the rumors that are going around that the Jets are looking at him. If they take him, that's one of the better landing spots, I think, for Drake London. But with that, we're going to now move on to our wide receiver 4, staying in this tier 2. And we've got Jameson Williams. So Ali, do you want to let us know a little bit more about Jameson Williams?
Yes, again, none of us agree on Jameson Williams. I've got him at 4, Kev's got him at 5, and Matt, you've got him at 3. Again, I think he's all in the same tier for all of us. So, I mean, from 1 to 6, you can arrange them in any order. But just listening to a podcast recently with Daniel Jeremiah, obviously the draft guru, he said that Jameson Williams has got the highest upside in this class. If everything goes to plan with Jameson Williams and he comes back from his injury, then he's got the highest upside in the class. Just because he's got that different gear to the other wide receivers. He's an absolute burner, speed for days. And it's something that I think NFL teams, they absolutely love speed. I think a lot of the teams are changing their offense to integrate speed into it. So I think Jameson Williams could make literally any offense better. Just a knock on him is he's not got the best hands. I think that could be an issue. We've seen a lot of speedy wide receivers just not work out because of the fact they have them drops, they have them struggles. But I do think he needs to land on an offense with an offensive-minded coach to maximize his skill set. He's going to need that quarterback that can throw it deep. He had an absolute bonkers 2021 season before his ACL injury. 1,500 yards, 12 touchdowns. A personal landing spot, and I've seen it mocked in plenty of places, is him to the Chargers, which I would absolutely love. Not just for Justin Herbert, but for Jameson Williams himself, I think would be a fantastic landing spot on a real young offense, an ascending team with an elite quarterback. So Jameson Williams, again, is one of the receivers that I wanted to put higher than 4, but I couldn't quite fit him in. But I'd feel really good about drafting Jameson Williams in the middle of the first round of rookie draft, sorry.
Yeah, I think one interesting thing with Williams is the fact that he got injured to finish his college career, and there's still rumours of him being the first wide receiver off the board, which it shows that he is liked in NFL circles. So that was one that stood out for me. Usually you get an injury, like thinking of guys like Brian Edwards, he got an injury, and that sort of derailed where he went. He went round 3, I believe. Yeah, I really like Jameson Williams. Obviously, I'm the lowest on him, but they're all in the same tier for me. Yeah, I just think that a blazing speed, it's something you can't teach. I think he's what we wanted Henry Ruggs to be on the field, but probably a better version, to be honest. He's a better route runner. And it's funny when you're watching his highlights, you see the angle of like the safety or the corner, you think, oh, he's going to catch him. And then he's celebrating in the end zone about 60 yards later. You're like, wow. So truly game-changing speed, interesting guy. Like you mentioned, he's got to land on a team that's offensive. If it's a run-heavy team and you use him as a deep shot guy, it's not going to work. You just got to get it in his hands and let him do the rest.
Yeah, like I say, I think I'm the most excited. I've always got him my wide receiver 3. touching back a little bit like what I said with Burks, it's that upside for me. The fact, like you just said, Kev, you can't teach speed, can you? And this guy, he's got plenty of it. It's such a shame that he got that ACL injury right at the end of the year because, like you said, I think he could have been the potential first wide receiver off the board. A lot of NFL teams were excited by him. I think now you've got to maybe temper expectations for early production anyway. Obviously, coming off such a serious injury, I think the chances that he's ready for week one, it could be 50-50. I've not really heard too much about his injury now. He's coming on from it, but you do just have to bear that in mind that it could be a slow burner. But with a guy like Williams, I mean, he's super exciting. Ali, you mentioned the Chargers. I tweeted out the exact same thing earlier on in the offseason. I mean, that is the one landing spot that I think we'd all, a little bit like we always talk about with the Titans, don't we, over at the Chargers. Getting somebody like Williams over there would be truly immense with Justin Herbert. And yeah, just using that speed. But he's not just a speed guy. He gets labelled because of his speed as a speed guy. But like Kev said, he's a really solid route runner as well. He's actually a football player, not just an athlete. He can produce on the field. So yeah, super excited by Williams. As I say, it's just a shame that ACL injury happened. Maybe I might have even had him a little bit higher than wide receiver 3 if it wasn't for the injury. But yeah, can't wait to see where he goes and the landing spot. I think is a lot for round 1, hopefully. So yeah, really excited to see where Williams lands. And with that, we're going to move on to the wide receiver 5, another guy in tier 2. I'm not going to introduce him though. I'm going to let his number 1 fan introduce who is our wildcard wide receiver 5.
Well, it's so funny actually, Matt, because this guy's come up on a couple of our shows. He came up on our show with Chad as his wildcard selection. He came up on our recent show with Anthony as one of his dream landing spots with the Chiefs. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because both of those shows we had, unfortunately, I didn't get to talk about him at all. Which,
the floor is yours, Kev.
I was gutted, to be honest. But yeah, it's George Pickens. He's the wide receiver 5. He's in our tier 2. I think he's the last wide receiver in our tier 2 as well. Poor Chris Salabe. George Pickens, he's going to do what Brees Hall did to me the other week and take my breath away. I've not got tons to add to what's been said to him over the previous shows. I just think he's got mega upside. If he didn't have that injury this season, then I think he might be in a tier on his own at the top as wide receiver 1 because of how he performed as a young guy at Georgia in the SEC. Just absolutely nailed it really as a rookie and a second season as well. There's a lot to like in his profile. I see AJ Green, who also went to Georgia in his profile. So I love him so much. What a guy. There has been buzz that he's getting more, he's creeping up draft boards because I think, look, about a couple of months back, he was struggling to reach the top 50. But I think that combined speed that he showed that he's not just a sort of an average athlete, he's someone that's got speed. That's really helped his cause, and he's going to probably go mid to late round 1 now. So, yeah, just avoid the Eagles, and my pants are off.
Well, Kev, I know you're really excited by him, and to be honest, I'm not too far behind you. He's my wide receiver 4, and like you said, if it wasn't for the injury, I think this is the guy that we were all in love with when, like you said, when he was a freshman, when he was putting up over 700 yards as a freshman, getting that early breakout age. I mean, this is the guy in Devy circles that everybody was getting super excited about. Sadly, that the injury came about last year, it's kind of knocked his profile a little bit. But I'm with you, Kev. I mean, in terms of talent, this guy is right up there, and we're getting, if anything, we're getting a little bonus out of it because we've got people fading him because of the injury. And I mean, I'm happy to scoop him up at a bit of a discount because of that. As I say, my wide receiver 4, if he is going to sneak into that mid to late first round, then yeah, that's super exciting. A little bit like you just spoke about as well, Kev, earlier. I mean, that's going to be a good team. So at least we know there's less chance of him landing on one of these poorer teams. If he can land, like Anthony said on the show last time, if he can land with the Chiefs, then God, I mean, yeah, I'm with you, Kev. We'll be running around Yorkshire with his pants off because it's going to be really exciting. Ali, come on, you've got to join us on the George Pickens hype train.
Get naked.
Well, I will do if he goes to the Chiefs. I'm with you, boys. I'm getting the first train up there, pulling my pants down. But yeah, there's the Chiefs. There's the Packers as well. I mean, surely, come on, surely the Packers with 2 first round picks, they're going to pick a wide receiver surely in this draft. But who knows? Yeah, our last show was George Pickens pants down. I do I do genuinely think he has the full package, and certainly if he goes to the Chiefs, I think Kev is going to have a bulging package with the selection. But I do think he's going to get definitely. He's a lock, I think, to get round 1 draft capital. And I think if he does end up on one of those teams at the back end of the first round, I think you're going to have to draft him fairly early on in your rookie drafts. We're talking 104, 105 possibly, if he does end up at one of those teams, because that is a prime landing spot on the real good offenses. And we know how good George Pickens is. So, I've got him as wide receiver 6, which seems a bit harsh, but for me, he could be wide receiver 3 to 6. They're all really close for me.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement, aren't we? That I think at the top end of this wide receiver class, it's hard to split them really. And I think more than ever, it's going to come down to probably a landing spot with a lot of these guys. And I know we keep saying don't overreact to the landing spots, but when you've got them all in that same tier, we've all got them pretty close to each other in terms of talent, then I think that is going to be the decider for these guys. So with that's as top five rattled up, and now we're going to move on to Ali, to your sleeper at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, so I'm going for another bigger bodied receiver in Alex Pierce. I'm actually lower than Kev with this selection, so it seems a bit odd that I'm talking about him, but it's wide receiver 14. Kev's got him at 12 and Matt's got him at 16. But I just like the fact that he carried Desmond Ridder in 2021 to his good season, which I know Kev loves. But yeah, just for a big guy, he ran a blazing 4.33, which is a 96th percentile speed score and 94th percentile burst score. So for a massive guy, he can run really fast, and he's obviously going to be a red zone weapon for an NFL team. He started off with the hype. He dominated the Senior Bowl and then backed it up at the Combine with a really great showing. His relative, funny stat, his relative athletic score is 98, which just not pro comp, but athletic comp to Calvin Johnson. So, I mean, if you try, so yeah, we're not talking about the next Calvin Johnson, but if you can get him in, say, the 3rd round of rookie drafts, then I'm all for taking him there. I think you just got to take him, and you'll pierce the hearts of your opponents. So just take Alec and just feel really good about it.
Yeah, he's just an all-round solid player. He plays special teams. He's going to add value as a red zone guy, a deep guy as well. Ridder's alpha obviously gives him a bonus in my eye. That's probably why I'm the highest on him. But yeah, I think draft capital is going to be king. Round 3, round 2 is going to be ideal. If he goes to round 4 or beyond, I'm going to end up dropping him down a little bit. Yeah,
athletic, size, speed, free. I mean, he ticks the boxes in terms of that. A little thing I would probably put against him is, I know we've just been saying that he was the alpha for it over there in Cincinnati, but 884 receiving yards and 8 touchdowns. I mean, when Ridder threw 3,334 yards and 30 touchdowns. I mean, the fact that he was the alpha, it's not like he's blowing up the stat sheet with just under 900 receiving yards. But yeah, he's got that size, he's got that speed. I think a lot of teams will get excited by him. It was part of that Cincinnati team that had the best season in franchise history. So I mean, we've got to give him some props for being a part of that as well. And as I say, being that number one option in the passing offense. So yeah, I think he's potentially a really interesting sleeper, just based on the fact that he has got that potential upside with the size and speed. But with that, moving on to Kevin and your sleeper at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, some Ridder hype. I like it. But yeah, my sleeper wide receiver, it's Calvin Austin the third. So I've got him 14, Matt's got him 20, and Ali 18. So I'm a bit above those guys. It's all really close. So the further you get down. So absolutely rapid, this guy, a legit track star at running a 4.32. And he finished his college seasons with back-to-back 1,000 yards. Both those seasons actually came after he gave up track. So that's probably why the breakout was a little bit later than you would expect. And I just think he's really great. The fact that he wins all over the field, he's shone as a punt returner as well. He is small, 5'8", 170, but two things stand out for me with Austin is that 77% of his reps in college came from the outside. And also this increase, this shift towards smaller archetypes, thinking guys like Hollywood Brown, Darnell Mooney. Deshaun Jackson, actually, he was a guy that was outstanding as a punt returner that had legit track speed as well. So Calvin Austin III, dynamic playmaker, easy to root for. Need to get him higher, boys.
Yeah, to be fair, he's definitely interesting. Like I said, shifty, explosive. Just looking at his yards after catch, actually got half of his receiving yards came after the catch. That just shows what he can do with the ball when he's got it in his hands. There's definitely potential upside there with that elite speed. I mean, that's nearing up to what we saw from somebody like John Ross. I mean, obviously that didn't quite work out for him, but I believe Austin's a better footballer than Ross. So yeah, definite upside with Austin. The thing that knocks against him, obviously, that size that you talked about, Kev. I think that's one thing people are going to talk about, and then the draft capital as well. I think if you can get day 2, then yeah, I'm definitely starting to get excited by Austin. But if he falls into that day 3, moving on to late day 3, that's when I start to get a little bit concerned with Austin.
Yeah, I imagine Austin's going to be a special teamer when he gets drafted, but then if he does well on special teams, he's always going to get opportunities if there's injuries or COVID hits, and he just needs one opportunity to show his speed, because he is a massive weapon with that elite speed, and we've seen NFL teams absolutely love speedy wide receivers. So I think you can probably get him in the 3rd or 4th round. So I do like to take a swing on Austin. So yeah, just word of advice, yeah, deliver the stone cold stunner and take Austin late in your drafts.
Ali, Kev's rubbing off on you far too much, Ali. I mean, it's shocking to see, to be honest. But with that, we're going to move on to my wide receiver sleeper, and I've gone for Jalen Talbot as my sleeper. I actually got him right up as my wide receiver 8. Ali got him wide receiver 15, Kev wide receiver 11. But a little bit like Kev said with Austin, this is another guy that's had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. Just under 1,500 receiving yards this season just gone. Had an invite to the Senior Bowl, really impressed over there at the Senior Bowl. He's 3rd best dominant rating in this class as well, so showing that he's right up there in terms of talent in this class. And to be honest, he's one of the most successful deep threats in the entire class as well. Just under 650 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns on targets over 20 yards plus. So a really interesting deep threat guy, and I think he's just solid all around. There's not that many holes in his game. The only knocks against him is probably that competition that he faced. It wasn't the strongest over at South Alabama, but I think people are potentially just overlooking him for that reason. And I think in terms of talent, is right up there for me personally.
Yeah, he does certainly get knocked for his small school production, but again, just looking at his measurables, he's got decent size and blazing speed. He was first come about for me at the combine. He's a big combine winner. He's moved up a lot of people's boards. I do think he can be a good complement to a great wide receiver or an alpha wide receiver. I think he can play a decent complementary role. And just look at these guys. I think draft capital is going to play a massive part, as we mentioned. If they get drafted in late day 3 or so, then we may have to forget about some of these. But then you never know. Some NFL teams could fall in love with them and get taken higher than we expect. So here's another one that certainly got some upside, and you can take him late on in your drafts.
Yeah, it's got to be the best conference name in college football, the Sun Belt. I love that. Yeah, I think with Talbot, his best games came against his best competition, despite him playing at a small school. Juan Silla, and the guy at NFL.com, he's got a top 10 wide receiver film grade on him, which is pretty good for a guy at a small school. And I like the fact as well that he wins in a variety of ways all over the field. So he could be a diamond in the rough, like the other sleepers we've mentioned, also a guy like Sky Moore. So it just shows you how deep this class is, especially with the small school guys.
Absolutely. I definitely think it's a really deep wide receiver class. But with that, we're going to move on to the tight ends now. Probably not quite as deep as the wide receivers, but as his tight end one in a tier on his own. I mean, this guy stands out head and shoulders above the rest for me. And that's Trey Mcbride. So Ali, fire away with Trey Mcbride.
Yeah, so Trey Mcbride is our consensus tight end 1. We've all got him tight end 1. I think it's pretty it doesn't take much working out to put him at what tight end 1 is the safest pick in this class. I think he's going to be the first tight end drafted. But because of that, I do think he's going to be overdrafted in rookie drafts. I don't think he's got the upside. Clearly, he's not a Kyle Pitts from last year. He's a unicorn. But I don't think he's got the skill set either to become elite. So I can see his ceiling being Dallas Goedert, Pat Freiermuth at best. So just a word of caution, I think, for me, drafting him in my rookie drafts. But I think he's going to be an immediate starter. He's just such a polished prospect at the tight end position. I think he's going to go round 2 in real life draft, and I think he's probably going to be drafted in round 2 and rookie drafts as well. I'm happy to take a punt on him later on in the round 2. I do think there's very little risk with McBride. It's just the upside. I'm not quite sure where the upside is with McBride or many of these tight ends in this class. But I think he comes with much more risk than other guys that you can be picking in round 2 of the rookie drafts, like some of the running backs or some of the wide receivers who've got a bit more upside than McBride. But I think because he's going to be the first tight end taken, I feel he could be just a little bit overdrafted.
Yeah, he's really solid, guys. Trey McBride. He's actually higher in my tight end model than I thought it would be when I compared him to previous class. I've got him with a slightly better score than TJ Hockenson, which he's turned out all right, I guess. Just with Trey McBride, I'd probably go a little bit earlier than the 2-6. I'd probably take him early round 2. And personally, I'd be going after him in a rebuilding side to sort of match your sort of expectation over a couple of years, 2 to 3 years, because tight ends don't generally flash straight away. If I'm a contending team, I'd probably avoid him, to be honest, because other teams will want him before he should go.
Yeah, I think in terms of tight end, he's got it all really what you're looking for. He's strong, he's athletic, on a 4.56 on his pro day. Just looking back to his last season in college, he did his best Kyle Pitts impression. He had 1,100 receiving yards and then just that one touchdown, a little bit like Kyle Pitts did. So maybe he's a little bit closer to Kyle Pitts than what we'll give him credit for. But now I think personally, in terms of dynasty, I'm actually quite excited by him. I think he can get up there, potentially getting into the just below the consensus top 5, that big top 5 that people talk about. I think you can get right up to the bottom of that, but like you said, I think it might potentially take time. But I do think he has that skill set that he can slot straight in and be a day one starter. It's just we know with tight ends it can take a little bit of time for him to get going. But as I say, he's got all the tools that you look for in a tight end. He can do it all, and with that, that's gonna result in fantasy production at some point down the line. As I say, you just might have to wait a little bit when it comes to the tight end. But then we're now going to move on to the guy that we've got as a tight end 2. And as I say, we're moving down to that tier 2. So Kev, who have we got at tight end 2?
Yeah, we've got Isaiah Likely. He's a guy that you've both got as your tight end 2. I've got him at tight end 4, just out of feeling sorry for you guys. Really, I thought I'd put him a little bit closer to your guys' number than where I think he should go. Now I'm only messing about. I think, to be honest, he was my tight end 2 until I saw his 40 time. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was pretty sluggish. So that's dropped him down for me. It's interesting because he doesn't look that slow on tape. I wonder if he's just not applied himself right, if he's not trained well. What the reasons are. That could be a false number, and actually it could be really quick, and it could be the tight end 2 in the class. But I'm going to swerve him. It's going to be very likely I'm not taking Isaiah in any league.
I had to get that in there, didn't you, Kev? No, I was really excited by him. Actually, before the combine, I had him right in that same tier as McBride. But like you said, Kev, that 40 time, he ran a 4.8 on his pro day, I believe. And I mean, that's just something we wasn't expecting from Likely. I mean, his whole game was based around this athletic guy that produced on the field, and the fact that he ran a 4.8 was real disappointing. But he had over 900 receiving yards and 12 touchdowns. It was over at small school at Coastal Carolina, but I think he's still really interesting, like you said, Kev. I mean, we can't put everything down to a 40 time. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just running in a straight line once or twice. I mean, things happen. If they don't learn the skill, then I mean, it's hard to knock against them, I think. So just from what I've seen on film, and I'm not going to claim to be some prone field grinder, but I think it looks really interesting in terms of what he can do on the field. And I think he's personally one of the better pass catchers in this tight end class, and for that's why I'm excited for him in fantasy. Draft capital is going to be key for him now. It's going to be interesting to see where he goes after that disappointing 40 time.
Yeah, Matt, I think you had that nice thread on Twitter about Isaiah Likely. That certainly got me interested in him, and just playing at Coastal Carolina in the Sun Belt just sounds fantastic to be able to play in. And I just like the fact with Likely that I don't think there's that many exciting tight ends to watch in this class, but he is one of them. I think he's got a lot more upside than some of the other tight ends. I like the fact that he's improved his stats year in, year out. And as you mentioned, 12 touchdowns in his senior year. So he's very, very productive, and he's a real real weapon, and I think he can be in the NFL in the right offense. I think he can be a real weapon. My personal strategy this year is possibly to leave McBride if he's going to be overdrafted, and take a swing on someone like Likely, who I think's got some real upside, sort of a round or a couple of rounds later in rookie drafts than what McBride's going in.
No, I think that's fair, and that leads on quite nicely to the next guy that we've got as a tight end 3 again in that tier 2, and it's Jalani Woods. This is a guy that throughout the off season's been building that hype. He was actually recruited as a dual threat quarterback by Oklahoma State, and then switched to the tight end position. He was barely used over there as a tight end. Transferred over to Virginia in 2021, and that's when he really started to break out. 44 receptions, 598 yards, and 8 touchdowns. I mean, you just got to look at the guy, and he looks like an absolute beast. I mean, 6'7", 253 pounds. He's what he's weighed at the combine, and then he ran a 4.61 at the combine as well. So just unbelievable. Just looking at his RAS score, he got a 10, which is his relative athletic score. That's actually the best score ever amongst any tight end that's been recorded. If you don't know what the RAS is, you just got to look at MathBomb on Twitter. You've probably seen it all over Twitter, guys, posting about these scores. You see him with the green, red, and yellow markings for the scores. But yeah, this guy is the best tight end that's ever been graded in that. So that's got to be really exciting in terms of tight end. I mean, we love an athletic tight end, don't we, in terms of fantasy. He's still really raw, as I say, transferring over from a quarterback to a tight end, not really playing much until this last season. But the potential upside it's huge for somebody like Woods.
Yeah, you mentioned he's a beast. He's an absolute monster. Someone that's going to be hard to defend against if he's utilised in the right way. He's certainly got a decent amount of upside if he's used in that right way. He's athletic for sure. I only really want to draft athletic tight ends. I think they offer upside, whereas others don't. But he's clearly still raw. He's still really fairly new to the position, as you mentioned, Matt. And I think draft capital is going to be massive for Jalani Woods. I've just got a notification saying that he's visited the Giants today, so I think that could be an interesting spot for him to land in.
Yes,
I do think he can be a decent tight end 2 for a team to start off with, and possibly move it down to tight end 1 down the line. So he's certainly an interesting prospect.
Yeah, you'll have to move him up my figures to Giants.
I know, yeah, tight end 1 definitely.
But yeah, Jalani Woods is my tight end 2. It's purely based on the athleticism in my eyes. Being that athletic is a massive boost to anyone's stock. Just got to hope he gets day 2 draft capital, really. That's all I can add, really. You've summed him up really well. Just hope he gets day 2 draft capital and he'll stay my tight end 2.
Yeah, getting to the Giants. I like the sounds of that. So we're now going to move on to the tight end 4 again, staying in tier 2. Hallie, who have we got at tight end 4?
It's Greg Dulcich or Dulcich. I've got him at tight end 4, Kev at 3, and Matt at 4. So we're quite unanimous on him. Is another athletic tight end. We seem to like athletic tight ends. He moved across from wide receiver. He bulked up, and it certainly worked out for him. He was another one of the Senior Bowl winners. And I think, pardon the pun, but he's the wild card of the tight ends for me. He can certainly do it all. And again, he needs to land in a spot that he's going to be utilised in the right way. There's no point being an inline tight end blocker because it's just not his game. He needs to be schemed out into space. Like some of his highlights, that 75-yard touchdown bomb against LSU just showed his athleticism, showed what he can do when he gets schemed open. He's got a multiple 100-yard games in his career, so that's certainly nice to look at. Extremely poor blocker, but then if he goes to the right offense that allows him not to have to do that too much, then it can be wheels up for Dulcich. Looking at last year's class, Kenny Yeboah, I was a bit in love with. He was my tight end sleeper last year as an athletic freak. But it didn't really work out for me. So it might not work out for Dulcich, but it might do.
Yeah, I think in my eyes, you've got McBride, Woods, and Dulcich. They're my top 3 there in the tier of their own on my board as such. So yeah, he's someone I'm interested in going after at the right price, but landing spot is going to be big for him, bigger than most players because he is a move tight end. He's not an inline blocker. He's going to need to be on a team that plays a lot of 12 personnel or make sacrifices to get him in space and get him the sort of easier looks than sort of chipping away and getting involved in all that aggro near the line of scrimmage. So he gets a plus point for a nice mustache. But yeah, I think he's got upside.
Yeah, I think for all these guys that we spoke about after McBride, I think they've all got upside and they're all athletic tight ends, and he fits right into that category as well. I think, like you just said, Kev, I think landing spot and draft capital as well, it's going to be key for all of these guys. But with that, we're now going to move on to the tight end 5, and as I say, we're moving out of that tier 2 now, moving down to tier 3. And Kev, who have we got as tight end 5?
Yeah, it feels sad that we've got to talk about a tight end 5 because we had a nice little tier 2 stoppage, didn't we? We just had to throw in another guy to fill a bit of time. No, it's Jeremy Rooker. He played at Ohio State, so probably not seen the best of him, to be honest. The fact that he's played on the offense with guys like Salabe, like Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith and Jigba. So I think he had 26 catches something last season, his best season. It's not amazing, but that's probably like a 50 catch season at a lesser program. So untapped potential, I would say, on this one, someone that's potentially going to be better than we think and potentially goes higher than the draft community think as well.
Yeah, for me, I think he's a bit of a poor man's McBride. I think he's a incredibly solid prospect, but I think he's possibly going to be a better NFL player than he is a fantasy producer. As you mentioned, he did suffer from that Ohio State program not utilizing the tight ends. But he's an incredibly good blocker, probably the best blocker in the class. I think he could see the field right away, which could then lead to opportunities. But yeah, just looking at his best game from last year, 5 receptions for 47 yards and 2 touchdowns. There's not really one in where you want to be drafting your tight ends. So you don't want to have a tight end that's touchdown dependent, which he possibly could be. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised in a few years if he is a solid fantasy asset, because I think he's going to hang around in the league and be a really good NFL player. I think NFL teams love him, and he could be drafted a bit higher up than we expect.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the lowest out of ours. I've got him as my tight end 8. I think it's just that unknown for me, but we've not really seen too much from him. But like you said, Kev, I think there's maybe some untapped potential that we've yet to see. So it's going to be really interesting to see where he goes in the upcoming NFL draft. If he can get that solid draft capital and again land on a team that can utilize him early, then who knows? Maybe he can be a potential sleeper at the tight end position and creep up people's draft boards. So with that, Ali, we're going to move on to your sleeper selection now at the tight end position.
Yeah, we're scraping the barrel a bit here, but we're going for one of my favourite drinks. So we're going for Charlie Coca-Cola. I've got him at tight end 9, Kev at 12, and Matt at 10. So we're not too far apart. And he's certainly not one of the most athletic tight ends, that's for sure. There is a few concerns there, but just the fact that he's been incredibly productive in his college career. He caught 62 balls this year, which is a hell of a lot for a guy of any position, really, a wide receiver, let alone a tight end. He had 168 catches in his college career, over 2,000 yards and 23 touchdowns. So he's shown his production. So can that translate across into the NFL? There's also his stats of 13 yards per reception, which is pretty impressive for a tight end. I do think he doesn't really do a lot wrong, despite the athletic concerns. He's also getting quite a bit of draft buzz. A lot of people are saying that he could be one of the first tight ends off the board, which would surprise me. But yeah, if he goes to the right offense, then Charlie Coda could be used in the right way, and he could be someone that can be utilized and end up as a decent tight end down the line. But certainly, yeah, we're scraping the barrel a little bit here.
Yeah, I know why he's your sleeper, Ali. It's because he's compared to Cole Kmet on NFL.com. That's his comp. So, yeah, when I read his name, I read it as Cherry Cola. He's not a guy that I saw a lot of. He played on the same offense as Breeze also. My eyes are firmly on him.
Yeah, I mean, he's a solid all-rounder, probably the most productive out of all of the tight ends in this class, but pretty average blocker, average athleticism. I mean, if you're not an athletic tight end, then I don't really want to know you, I'm afraid. So probably not a guy that I think I'm either the lowest or Kev's the lowest on him at tight end 12. But yeah, potential sleeper. Again, it's all going to boil down to that draft capital. If he can be one of the earlier tight ends, then who knows? I think you're going to have to move him up your draft board. But Kev, we're going to move on to you now and your sleeper at tight end.
Yeah, I'm going for Chig Okonkwo. So 2 things you want in a tight end is athleticism and opportunity. Will he get the draft capital? I'm unsure personally, but was he the fastest tight end at the combine? Yes, he was. Physically gifted, he's raw, he's got tons of upside. The only downside I really see is the fact he could be moved to H-back, which would suck if he's mainly blocking out of the backfield and catching a few passes like Hosea DeGuara. That happened to him at the Packers. But he's so impressive with ball in hand. 52 catches this season, which is really nice. And film guy at the Draft Network, Kyle Krabs, he comps him to David Njoku, which is pretty sexy.
Nice. Athletic for sure. Probably not the biggest, 6'2", 238 pounds, which is 8th and 4th percentile respectively. But apart from that, he's definitely exciting in terms of that athleticism. Definitely raw, but for sure a guy that could develop down the line. And yeah, who knows, could potentially cause some waves in the NFL.
Yeah, so when we look for a sleeper tight end, we look for fast. Well, he's got that. Athletic, he's got that. Upside, sure. All going to depend on the draft capital, but certainly tight ends that can do damage after the catch. There's not many of those. That's definitely appealing. So I'd love to see him get a few tight ends screens. Can certainly do damage in that respect. But yeah, it's all down to the draft capital. If he gets solid draft capital, then he's certainly someone that I'm going to have to move up my board.
Yeah, and speaking of that, we're going to move on to my sleeper tight end. I've gone for Derrick Diese Jr., son of former 49ers O-lineman Derrick Diese Sr. Solid production over at San Jose State, just over 700 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns. Athletic, but he did actually disappoint in the 40 time that he ran. He ran a 4.93, which nobody was expecting. A little bit like Isaiah Light. For me, this is a guy that I like because of his athleticism. Sadly, didn't produce in terms of what he ran at the 40, but still think he's an exciting tight end prospect from a smaller school. A little bit undersized, a little bit like Kev Selection, 6'3", 244 pounds, but I think he's all round solid. Draft capital again is going to be key for our ranking after the NFL draft.
He's another pretty athletic tight end, multiple 100-yard games in 2021, so he is productive, can make splash plays galore, and he's really good with the ball in his hands. So again, he's someone that has got upside if he gets that draft capital.
Yeah, I had him lower cost, Matt had him high. But yeah, I think converted wide receiver to tight end, it's going to be interesting to see if he reverts back, really. He's a smaller guy, a little bit like a Okonkwo. He might end up being an H-back, so a lot will depend on what the team that drafts him has plans for him.
Yeah, so they were all his sleepers, guys that you probably never hear about again after the NFL draft, but it was fun to talk about them for a few minutes. But yeah, that brings us to the end of the show where we preview the upcoming rookie class at the wide receiver and tight end position. So before we wrap things up, Guy, have we got any final thoughts on today's show? Ali, we'll start with you.
Yeah, we've talked about the wide receivers. I think they are definitely the pinnacle of the 2022 draft class. I know you've got Breece Hall. We won't talk about him. But yeah, the wide receivers, certainly there's 6 or 7 that could potentially be elite wide receivers. And I do think there is 6 or 7 that could be drafted in the first round. So they're all going to get solid draft capital and they're all going to go early in rookie drafts. They're just a thing. Tiers are certainly more important than rankings from 1 to 12 of these guys. So yeah, I do think this draft class does lack elite talent, but certainly there's a lot of depth there.
Yeah, I just think that top tier rookie wide receivers, whether you've got 6 guys or 8 guys, that's the reason that I won't be taking any wide receiver before Willis, Hall, or Walker. I do think if you've got one wide receiver miles clear the rest, then is a debate. But if not, you're not using tiers and positions scarcely properly. Calvin Austin, 14, I'm too low. I think if you say his name fast as well, he can get away with people thinking he said Kevin Austin, who's also a wide receiver. So say his name fast, and if he misses, you can say, I was on about Kevin Austin. And then the last thing is drafting a day 3 rookie tight end in non-tight end premium is basically a sucker move. So please refrain and just pick up off your waivers in a couple of years' time.
Absolutely. I think wide receiver deep at top, tight end is a clear one, and then beyond that, it's just some athletic dart throws. But yeah, all this talk has got me really excited for the NFL draft next week. So it's getting close and looking forward to it. But with that, thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on Twitter at Fantasy Wildcard. Also, if you could please do leave us a 5-star podcast review because it really helps us get a larger reach, a bit more exposure to a wider audience. So thanks for that. And be sure to join us for our next show where we welcome the brilliant Katie Flower of Under the Helmet Dynasty, where we're going to complete a pre-draft rookie mock draft. So really exciting show coming up. And thanks once again. Have a good one, and we'll see you soon.